Okay. Um, Good afternoon, everyone. We are having some technical difficulties today. So I think the best way to view this might be by logging into our Facebook site, but we're going to go ahead and record this so that we can play it back at another time. I just want to remind those of you who successfully made it into Zoom that our audience microphones and video cameras have been muted to help us out on bandwidth, but please ask questions, type them into the Q&A button on your toolbar in Zoom. If you're viewing in Facebook already, just post as you normally would, and I'll keep checking Facebook to see if there are questions over there. When Ms. Scoon has finished her presentation and it's time for Q&A, I promise I won't forget those of you in Facebook. I'll check to make sure that we get your questions as well. Don't forget, you can go on to our website and watch this recording or any of our meeting recordings, either on the Facebook or YouTube buttons at the top right corner of our website. So Shirley, I will turn the meeting over to you now.
Okay, I am Shirley Lewis Brown, a board director and co-chair of the League of Women Voters of the Pensacola Bay Area's Juvenile Justice and Education Committee. On behalf of the League and our president, James Spruill, who could not be present today, welcome to this very informative program. We schedule hot topics meetings when there are issues of interest to our community that are not scheduled during our routine monthly program. Cecile Scoon, our speaker, will discuss the League's effort to help ex-felons, returning citizens to register to vote and give an update on the continuing work. About Cecile. Cecile Scoon received her undergraduate degree from Harvard in 1981. After graduating from the University of Virginia School of Law in 1984, she spent 5 years on active duty in the Air Force in the Judge Advocate General's Corps, or JAG. She retired from the Air Force Reserve as a major in 2005. She is currently a civil rights lawyer in Panama City, Florida. Cecile attempts to protect the rights of those wronged at work due to their race, religion, age, disability, place of birth, or unwanted sexual advances. Cecile enjoys parenting her 3 children and watching soccer with her husband, law partner, and League of Women Voters member, Alvin Peters. Cecile is the first vice president of the League of Women Voters of Florida and a past president of the Bay County League of Women Voters. In that capacity, she is also chair of the State League efforts on the restoration of rights and for healthcare. Cecile is a proud member of the Xi Omicron Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Thank you, Cecile, for sharing this valuable information with our community. Now, Cecile.
Thank you so much for that very lovely introduction. And I am impressed that you pronounced my sorority perfectly. Thank you. That doesn't happen all the time. But it's my great pleasure to speak with you on the hot topics. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I have a slide that I'll kind of run through fairly quickly as we're talking, because sometimes it's helpful to have a visual. So I'm going to share screen and hopefully I'll pull it up. Okay. Well, this is the first slide it's so important for us to remember that our wonderful success with Amendment 4 with so many of our allies was after 150 years of disenfranchisement. And so that is quite an accomplishment. The gentleman there is a Vietnam veteran who came home as a young man and had some issues and got in trouble, got back on his feet, but he had a felony. So even though he fought for our nation, he had never voted. We had a party at the supervisor of elections office. You can see the red, white, and blue cake and the napkins. And that's actually me that's my hand with League of Women Voters. But it was a wonderful festive occasion, and the newspaper was there and the TV and a lot of tears. So when we go through the hard work that we're dealing with, it's so important to remember the individuals. It's changing one person's life at a time. Of course, we want to get it going a little faster, but it's important to remember the individuals. You all know about the League of Women Voters. I often have this presentation for others, and I always like to give a little plug for the League. And of course, in 1972, men were accepted in Florida, and my husband is a member. Um, the prohibition on persons with felony convictions from voting, that started directly after the Emancipation Proclamation. The intent, and we know this intent because it's in black and white in the legislative history over 150 years ago, was to prevent persons who had been enslaved, black men, from voting. And thinking about it, it's kind of logical, although it's terrible, because for the landed class of white men, they were going to allow people that they had full control over to sit in equality with them, and they didn't want to do that. So they lowered what the felony thefts were, and they made just about any little thing a felony. And then they said, we're going to keep people from voting. Well, going forward over the 150 years, although it had a very directly racial basis of its origin, it impacts everybody. And so over the years, by the time Amendment 4 passed in 2018, the majority of people that it impacted, over 70%, were white men. And the rest, majority, were black men, and a small percentage of Hispanic men growing. And then the women's percentage was starting to grow. It certainly disproportionately impacted persons with lower incomes and persons with less education, because when they got in trouble, they often took a plea, tried to get out of jail, they had to go back to their jobs. They weren't able to maneuver the legal system quite as well as persons with more resources. The pressure was on because with Governor Christ, he just had one time when he was our governor, and he did a huge number of people in terms of returning citizens and restoring their right to vote. And you can see that on the graph. And in two terms as governor, Governor Bush did a fair amount, but much less than Governor Christ in his one, the middle bar. And the little tiny, tiny bar that you can barely see is what Governor Scott did in his 2 terms. And the problem was the process at the time was totally dependent on the governor. And Governor Scott required people to wait 5 or 7 years before they could even apply after they finished their incarceration and probation. And then they had to get in line. The line was 11,000 applications long at the time Amendment 4 passed. And at that time, Governor Scott was doing about 300 a year. And he was denying 70% of the 300. But the waiting time for the last person in the 11,000 line list was 32 years. Well, that was just not acceptable. And we found that when we shared that basic information, pretty much it was so bipartisan, people really wanted to change this system. They didn't want to have throwaway people, and they believed in second chances. We had Floridans for Fair Democracy, which was run by Desmond Meade, the League of Women Voters, NAACP, the Koch brothers, many churches, synagogues, and mosques. They have a shared philosophy of rehabilitation and welcoming people to return to their place in society once the debt has been paid. So we won, as you know. We were all so excited, many of us working very, very hard. right after that, we knew that what was going to change is that people no longer had to do the application. They no longer had to wait 5 or 7 years. Um, they could file their application to vote as soon as they completed their sentence. It did exclude murder and felony sex offense. Well, shortly after it passed, we all know the legislators got involved and they said, "We want to help you. We need some legislation." We said, "No, we don't." But they didn't listen to us and they amended the statute to say at the very end of the session to say that you had to pay all financial obligations, all including restitution, fines, fees, and cost before you could vote. And that, and there was also a part of the statute that people don't discuss a lot, but is very important. In the new statute, it says even if a judge had converted your criminal fines and fees to a civil lien, which means it was no longer a criminal matter, and the judges would do that because they wanted someone coming out of jail to be able to tell a future employer, yes, I finished my criminal sentence. And the fines and fees would sit over on the civil side of the house alongside divorces, evictions, and things of that nature. Well, Senate Bill 7066 took that away. And if that had remained in place, then it would have been much less people that would have needed our help. Instead of the 1.6 million people that's estimated that need help getting their voting restored, it would have been somewhere under 500,000, a much smaller number. Somewhere it's been estimated to 250,000 to 500,000. So because of that last minute change, taking out civil liens, the impact of civil liens, that really hurt us. So now what we are left with is, in order to vote, a person has to take care of all of their financial obligations after they finish their incarceration and supervision, if any. Supervision being probation and or parole. So they have to pay all fines, fees, and restitution. They can also, the statute allows you to ask the entity or the person who's entitled to restitution to waive that restitution. If the person wants to waive the restitution, they have to come into court and testify, or they can sign a notarized affidavit. We can also petition the court for a modification to convert the financial obligations to community service, or we can petition the court to rule that no further payment is needed. Some of the things that the court might look at for is the education of the returning citizen, their physical or mental health, if they have disabilities. Do they have obligations at home, either with children or the elderly or other dependents that they have to take care of? The judge would be looking at all of those things. So we are grateful that there is a pathway in 7066 to allow a court to be petitioned and for people to go in and get the modifications. But not surprisingly, many returning citizens or persons with felonies have very limited resources. They often have minimum wage jobs. They have shift work. They aren't able to get off work easily and take off and go to court. It's just a lot of complications. So we said, you know what? Let's see what the league can do to close the gap. Because we know from doing a lot of petition work and voter registration work that there's a correlation between those with felony convictions and having the ability, being unable to be able to hire a lawyer, because many people have the public defenders. And so there's a correlation with lack of resources and the inability to hire a lawyer. So what we came up with is we said, let's create continuing legal education program, which we have done. And the Florida Bar has approved, we actually have two. The Florida Bar has reviewed it and approved each one for 2 hours of continuing legal education credit for the lawyers for each of the courses that they take. And that is a very important thing. Please share that with any of your attorney friends. because in Florida, we are required, as in most states, to have over 30 hours of continuing legal education every 3 years. So when we get that, that usually costs us about $100 to $125 per hour. So the league is offering those 2 CLEs completely free. And so that's a $400 to $600 value that lawyers can get. And we, in turn, we're asking, please consider providing some legal assistance from pro bono, which is free, legal assistance to returning citizens if they have questions about their records or if they need a petition for modification. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're trying to offer something to lawyers and people trained to be able to help the returning citizens. We're offering them the ability to take care of their professional obligations and to learn about a new change in the law, because this law just went into effect the spring of 2019. It didn't exist before. For 150 years, it didn't exist. So a lot of lawyers who are not in law school, they're completely unaware of the process. They don't know what to do. They want to help. And so this is basically a bridge or a pathway to get lawyers in the door. And so far we've trained over somewhere between 1,500 to 2,000 lawyers. We did a lot in person, and then we've placed the training on our league website, and people can click on it. And there's descriptions of each of the courses for people. So what we do is we show them where to look. And this up on the screen right now is looking at the Department of Corrections website, which has the majority of people's sentences. So for example, you would look up somebody's name and you would look them up, you would have their birth date, because there might be several John Smiths. And so you want John Smith, who was born on a particular day, April 1, 1959, or something like that. And then you would look him up or her, and you would be able to click on these buttons and go to the Clerk of Court's website for most of it and look at their records. When you look at the records, you would see what happened in the case. I've done this myself for about 12 individuals, and of 3 of the 12 individuals were not even felons, but they didn't know that because all they remember is they were in court and the judge pronounced things, or their lawyer said, sign this plea, or whatever happened. They had a trial. But a lot of times what happens over time, the judges will dismiss the case, or if there's a plea down to a misdemeanor. Now, a misdemeanor is also a crime, but it is a lesser crime. You can still vote. So I actually had 3 individuals, when I looked at their records, I just called them up and I said, I've looked at your last records, and I sent them a copy of the records so they could have it for themselves. And it literally showed that they were not felons, and they had not been voting for years. They were so happy, and I was happy too. So it does not always require an actual petition being filed. So what we're doing is we're determining what are the financial obligations, if any, remain, and we're explaining to the returning citizens what the record is. Now, a lot of times there's a situation where people have paid money to the probation office or directly to the victim, and that is, the judge can actually tell them to do that. Well, the clerk of court, in the past, they were not required to make any records of that. So actually, the clerks of court don't have a complete record. So sometimes you have to ask the person, did you pay anybody else? And you would try to get information and evidence of that, try to present it to the court to show, what the real record is. So these are the things that people can do to help returning citizens. We are generally targeting attorneys, but attorneys often use paralegals. And so a person can do paralegal type work by looking up the records, sort of familiarizing themselves. And then what the Florida Bar has recommended is that research would be reviewed by an attorney. So it is possible for an individual to work alongside with an attorney and help the attorney get the records and do the busy work of printing the records, saving them, and gathering them. because there are individuals who have offenses in more than one county. And it can take, from my own experience, 20 minutes to up to 2 hours to collect all the records. So that is something that if people want to get involved, let us know. Take a look at the CLEs and we'll see if we can help you help others working with an attorney. We also like to remind people of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, which is the executive director is Desmond Need, who's a very charismatic, very influential person, a fighter for Amendment 4. But he has spoken out and people are listening to him. And they've gathered, I think the last I heard was over $30 million in donations to pay returning citizens fines and fees if they meet certain criteria. So people can also call, or there's the email there, you go online and reach out to them and see if they're able to help people. So that's something we can share with returning citizens also. A lot of people like to ask, well, what happened with all that litigation? Well, as we were all mesmerized with the litigation, myself included, that we did have a federal trial. It started 27 April. The decision came out in May. We won hands down. It was a very well-written, very comprehensive, over 120-page order that addressed many of the legal issues with many remedies. And not surprisingly, the governor filed an appeal and filed a motion for a stay. Which was granted, which meant that once the stay was put in place, that 7066 was again the law of the land, not the final order that we got from the judge in federal court. And they on the end of the middle of September 11th, the 11th Circuit reversed the trial court. And so where we are right now is Senate Bill 7066 is ruling. That is the law of the land. That is where we are. So that is why our program that we got approval from the Florida Bar for 2 hours CLE for each of the courses is so important for us to utilize and publicize to people. In fact, I had spoken before, I think the Escambia Bar Association a few months ago in 2020, and they were very interested, and hopefully some of those persons have signed up to offer pro bono work. As I stated earlier, the first of the courses is more basic and more historical. The second course discusses in more detail the actual recommended format of the petition for modification. And that is on our website. That's easy to find. Since then, we have also continued our work to inform returning citizens about their opportunities. And we did a partnership and worked with the ACLU of Florida. They had done research and gotten the names of about 250,000 people who were returning citizens in Florida who had actually finished their sentences and either paid their fines and fees or had none. But many of these people were not registered to vote. And what we have found is a lot of people are not reading the paper. And it kind of makes sense. You know, if you can't vote, well, it's up-to-date issues in the paper. So sometimes you're just focused on things you can control. And so we have found that there's still a lot of education that needs doing all across the state of Florida with all of our different leagues, whether it just be all kinds of ways that you can bring it out when you're out in public and share the good news. And we actually have some postcards that we can send any league that wants to spread the word. What we've done is we've tried to come up with a positive way of bringing this up and a positive way of sharing this information. Anyway, we texted and we called these returning citizens and we sent postcards, and many of you might have volunteered to help do that. And everybody was amazed at how well the league worked to get this done. And we had some other volunteers outside of the league that also came to our assistance. But we ended up touching each and every one of the people on the list at least once. Many got a postcard and a call. So it was, what we did is just try to let people know with the information and where to go to get more information and look it up. We created a hotline, and there's the number. Please share that with anybody that has any questions about their voting or wants to get more information. It's 407-710-5496. That is our dedicated hotline for anybody with questions about voting, in particular pertaining to any felony convictions of things of that nature. We also have a dedicated email address, and our prior executive director came up with the address, which I love, and it says, "Can I vote?" at LWVFL.org. So I think it's kind of a good one to remember. And so when we get those phone calls, sometimes people just say, mail me a paper application. I don't have internet, or just simple questions. And so we just try to answer the questions at the lowest level that we can. And if they need an attorney, then we make that referral to one of our pro bono attorneys. I was telling you just before about some of the postcards that we used, that we sent to the people who, many of whom were unaware that they could vote. And so we tried to make it personal, and we had 4 different family groupings, and share the good news. Everyone deserves a second chance, and your vote can impact someone you love. We have a young father with his child. We have a young mother with her child. We have 2 single people, just trying to cover the waterfront in terms of demographics, ages, communities. And then the information, it was on the back of the form of the postcard. And so we sent out over 250,000 of those. Thank you all for your diligence in helping do that work. Really made a difference. And we got some recent results. We got information that I think we were told that about 80,000 people actually registered to vote of the groups that we were reaching out to, and about 30,000 actually voted. And that is a really moving the dial, and in terms of our impact, and we hope to continue that kind of impact in whichever ways that we can. People say, well, what does that petition for modification look like? Well, here's the top of it. It says, in the circuit court of whatever judicial circuit you're in, and we have 20 circuits, so you put the number, the right number, you would put in the county and in the name of the person that you are representing. And then what we've done with the format is we have made the allegations that would fit so that a person could get the benefit of the modification process. One of the things we have to assert is that the person is not been convicted of a felony or a murder offense, or any of the additional statutory crimes that are listed in the Florida statute 98.0751, which is the codification, or in the statute book where Senate Bill 7066 has been placed. So what we're saying to all the lawyers, come and join us. We would be thrilled to have your help. All of our league members who are not lawyers, if you'd like to learn a little bit more and assist, and let us know, you are also welcome. But the one thing we can all do is we can spread the word about the work that we're doing, and we can direct people to the league website, which was recently updated, by the way. I took a journey through the league website, and it's been updated. We had received a grant to do some of this work, and in the grant, we had the capacity to update the website on all things Amendment 4. And we also said, let's just update the entire website. So the whole website has a new facelift, is easier to maneuver, and we hope that you look at it for all of your issues that you are concerned about. So I think this is the time. If we have any questions, we can go back there, and I'll stop sharing the screen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cecile. And we have had technical difficulties, so we don't have any questions here in Zoom. I think we were only able to get a few people in as into Zoom, but let me go check over on Facebook. I've been trying to answer field questions about why Zoom hasn't been working, and I lost sight. And while there are people watching over
Well, while you're looking, then let me, I've
okay.
done this presentation probably 50 times.
Okay,
So I can give you, I kind of know some of the common questions. So I can
okay,
answer a
please,
few of the,
those.
one of the questions that we get frequently, does a person, if they're a lawyer, do they have to be active, have an active bar license in the state of Florida? And I went to the Florida bar and asked them, and they said, absolutely not. Because a person who has an inactive license in Florida or is licensed in another state, which we have many retirees that come from other states, and does not have a Florida license, they would be comparable to a paralegal working for a lawyer. I have a paralegal, I'm a practicing attorney, and most lawyers do. And we train them to do work. Sometimes they can get an education, but we train them and we review all of their work. As I stated earlier, that's a place where league members, non-lawyer league members, if they wish to get involved, can assist in gathering records and doing a quick summary. And then the Florida bar has said a Florida lawyer with a Florida license would then have to look over the records and then render an opinion to the returning citizen about whatever next steps are. So we get a lot of that question. Then people sometimes they'll say, does it cost money to get the records? Usually not, but some small courts do not have everything digitized. Like I was showing, you went to, I'm from Bay County Clerk of Court. They've got their records digitized, I think to 1980. If you need anything past that, and there are many people that do need past in time, past 1980, then a clerk of court would have to go to a dusty box and open it up, scan it, and send it to you. And there would be usually $1 fee per document. Sometimes if you let the clerk know that this is pro bono, you're not collecting a fee, it's possible it'll be waived, or that might be just an expense that the lawyer usually will take on. So that's how we address the records. There is also another way with the Florida um, Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE. There's a fee. It's like 24, I think $24.95 or something like that, where they will give you the entire record for an individual. And law firms, we've had law firms volunteer and try to help us. They might have money set aside to, help and look up the records of, several different people and pay that fee. So most of us are going through the Department of Corrections to get to the county, the circuit for the records. And you can also, if it's in your jurisdiction, you can talk to someone at the clerk's office that, once you've been practicing a while, they know who you are. And, oh, Miss Scoon, yes, we'll give it for you. And they're often very, very nice. Now, if I try to do that in Miami, they're like, who is this lady? We don't, some lawyer, we don't know that. If they don't know who you are, then you might, here's a little fee for that. So it's just one of those things we try to help people, train people to get the free records, but there may be times there's an incidental cost that usually, in the past, lawyers have usually borne that, less than $50, and it's just a contribution. So that's generally how the records work. Now, what are we doing? The next question we often get is, how are you working with the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition? Well, we've worked hand in glove with them throughout the whole process, trying to get the petition on the ballot, and then trying to encourage people to vote yes on the ballot so it would pass. And we were certainly involved with the legislators testifying. Sometimes Desmond would testify, and I was usually the main person to testify on behalf of the league. And I would get up right behind him, or Neil Volz, he's one of his assistants. And so we would talk frequently in the halls, and you say this, I'll say that kind of thing. So we've worked, very closely together. When it came to the litigation, FRRC did not get informally involved with the litigation. They stayed out for whatever their reasons were. And I think they actually had negotiated to put the pathway to go to court, which was a wonderful thing, because without that, the door would be shut, right? It would be more shut. So I think I can't speak for them, but my understanding was, well, since they were a part of putting that in, they felt uncomfortable to attack the very thing they kind of helped to make better. So anyway, we did the litigation. It was the ACLU, Southern Poverty Law Center, another group that does lawsuits on voting matters, a fabulous organization, a Center for Voting or something like that. Anyway, we were the main ones, and we had 19 individual plaintiffs. And but they were very, very happy when we won, and very, very sad when the appellate decision came out. So what we're doing now is we're all just working at this. What the league was doing initially is we would send to FRRC the list of trained lawyers, and they would also do referrals. They've sent us a few cases over the span of the last 12 months that we've worked on, and we've had recent talks. Desmond and I have been talking quite a bit in the last, I'd say, month, and we want to make that connection a little bit more well established so that we can help more individuals. I also should share with you two things. We did get a grant that it's used up, but what we used it for was to hire 2 interns. One intern was doing outreach to reentry programs, which is like halfway houses and just helping people when they get out of prison. How do they transition into, the world? And so it helps them with job skills, interviewing, just, sometimes they need a state ID. They just need some basic support. And so we're letting those reentry programs know that to do a referral to us or the FRRC. So we've reached out to over 100, and we've sent them the flyer. They asked us for flyers. We made a flyer for them, similar to the postcard that you saw. And we're also reaching out to legal services organizations across the state. And we're asking them to actually do the legal work too, in addition to training their pro bono panel. There's a lot of lawyers volunteer to do pro bono work through legal services. And we're getting a really good response from them. So we're just trying to reach those 1.6 million people in every way that we can. And we welcome people talking about this at different functions, different community events as we start to get back in person, or there's actually, you can bring it up on Zooms, church Zooms or community Zooms or whatever events that you're at. So those are some of the frequently asked questions, Mary.
Well, we do have one question from an audience member. She asked, is the returning citizen or the person registering in any legal danger if the person owes money but doesn't know about that?
Well, it requires intent. You have to intend to lie. So
Okay.
what we ask people to do, we recommend do your due diligence. We say if a person doesn't know, don't register to vote. People should know, unless they're getting so elderly that, dementia is setting on them. They should know I was convicted, Bay County, Leon County, whatever counties. And so you go back either on their own or with the help of one of our pro bono lawyers. They just reach out to us and let us know, I need help. We have people who want to help. So they look at the records, and to the best of their ability, if it shows that there's nothing owed, then by all means, all we can do is rely on what the records show.
Okay.
So that person who did their due diligence, we've had many prosecutors say, and that when you look at the application, you're swearing to the best of your knowledge and belief. So if you can't find any records that say otherwise, or it shows that everything's been paid and there's an error in the records, but you looked and were like, you know, honestly, we've had many, many prosecutors, and during the actual trial, there were statements that were made by the government that said that is not a case we could even try to bring, and it would be a defense because you're looking at what the state has provided as evidence. And unless we could show that you knew there was a secret conviction, but convictions aren't secret, they're public. So that's what we're saying. The person just needs to look carefully, get some assistance if they're not able to look, and go forth with knowing that they've done everything that they can.
Okay. And someone else would like to know, how would one offer their pro bono services? How would they sign up for that?
Well, go to the League website, League of Women Voters of Florida.
Okay.
It's been recently updated. There's going to be a box that says Restoration of Rights. You click on it, and then it says Learn More. And then we're targeting, our information is organized for different types of people. There's one set of, and everybody can read everybody else's, but we're trying to answer frequently
Right.
asked questions to the group. So the lawyer will see, are you a lawyer or legal services? You click on that and it's all there.
Okay.
A little description of the courses so they can decide if they want to take both or which one they want to do. Once they do that, then they're supposed to email my office to let me know that they not only registered, but they took the course. I have a wonderful volunteer named Barbara Ryder. She sends the certificate that we received from the Florida Bar. And with the more advanced courses, we actually have some additional paper materials that we send digitally to the lawyer. And that's how we do that.
Okay, so I just went back and let them know, gave them the URL of the website in case they weren't familiar with LWVFL. Yeah, the new website looks very nice.
Oh, good.
Okay, and then I had a question. So for those of us who are members here in the Pensacola Bay area, would you have any advice? I mean, I have no legal background, and I normally work in other capacities in the league, but how would somebody like me, how could I be helpful? What could I do to support this effort? Is there any way a layperson such as myself could be helpful?
There's two ways that you can do it. One is you can look around in your community and find out what reentry programs there are. We hired somebody who's helping us do that. We're almost out of our grant money. We use the grant money to hire her, but we have a little tiny pot left. And we're hoping we get another grant from the same organization because they've been very pleased with our work, but you never know with the grant situation. So bottom line is, she has gone online and researched a lot of things, but there are reentry programs that are not online. You know, it's just a small church or a small group of people that just are there helping. So that would be easier for all of our league members to do that research of what is in place in your community. Who should we contact?
Surely may already be aware of those, but maybe we should do that research and then publish a list so people could join, you know, and help as they can.
That would be wonderful, and send that to the league, myself, or Can I Vote, that dedicated line. Can I Vote at LWVFL.org, and that's how we would then follow up. Our intern would follow up, and we have an introductory package. She would call. What we have found is many of them have very limited resources, but they have the contacts. So we have sent over 100 packets. I actually have one sitting beside me. If we have time, I can open it up and show you on the screen. Do you want to see what we're sending them?
Yeah, sure.
She's coming in tomorrow, Friday, to gather these up. But here's our little packet. And we sent over 100 of these, and some have addresses that were bad. We created a business card, and it has our friends FRRC information. We got their permission and they approved the card. And then it has a lot of the things I was telling you,
Oh,
the
wow.
dedicated line. So we have a bunch of these cards in the packet. We have a one-page set of instructions that they can copy at a 7th grade level, telling an individual how they can fill out the form of the registration application. Because some of the places, they're not either allowed by law or they don't have enough staff to sit with a person. So then the person can use this letter. And then if they have any questions, we have the same can I vote? We have the same phone number. But some people, they can follow the instructions. It's box by box. So we have that cover letter. Then we've sent about 25 English language. Oh, and by the way, we're using Lisa voter application. We're using the older one, 2013, because the newer one is not good. It asks you, are you a felon? And you have to say yes or no. The old one says, I am not a felon, or if I am, I've had my rights restored. So everybody signs the same box and you're not like drawing attention to yourself. So we send the older one and we send so many in English and so many in Spanish.
Okay.
We actually need to work on, as one of our little things, is to see if we can get it in Creole as we find the Creole communities down south. There's not a lot around the state, but we certainly, as we get
Right.
grant and funding, we can specialize a little more. But right now, we're just trying to hit it quickly out. There was a survey done that a lot of people need to know that this was designed by the Second Chances, the campaign that people use, and this shows that when people get their voting rights back, they recidivate 33% less. So we're not paying for them to be housed and fed. They are usually working, providing for their families, and they can be taxed. So this explains that, and there's a link that you can go into more detail on here, but it explains that the total economic impact is $365 million positive, to the positive.
Wow.
People get their voting rights back. So we like people, 'cause some people are motivated by the heart and some people are motivated by numbers. And some people are motivated by both. Well, this is the poster. You saw it was, we just took
Yeah.
one of the images and then here's another. We have 6 different images. So we just put them until we never had that, but we got a lot of returning reentry programs would say, we don't have this, we don't have that. Can you send us a flyer? And so the league is moving into realms when you're dealing with communities that deal with persons with felony convictions, really, myself included. That is not something I grew up around. That is not something that I practiced in myself. When I was active duty, I did do courts martials, but the criminal system in the military justice system is unique and not quite like outside. So a lot of us have the best intentions, but we're novices going in this realm. So we're trying to listen to what they're telling us we needed. So we actually created this just for them because we got so many requests. Send me a flyer, send me a flyer. We're like, well, we don't have it. So wait a minute, let's get some of that grant money, let's make a flyer. So that's what we've done. And if we're blessed enough and lucky enough to get funding again, we've listed out some of the things that we want to do. And hopefully we'll be supported in our work because, again, in this arena, and it's something the league should do across the board. We need to make real partnerships with the people we say we want to help. We don't want to helicopter in, they don't know us, and we're going to helicopter back home to our homes. We really want to learn from people and be respectful and hear what their needs are and try to address it. So this is a technique that we can use in all of our issues, whether it's education, healthcare, and I think a lot of us do that. We really do that. But I think if we do it a little more, especially when we're dealing with communities that maybe we ourselves are not comfortable with or haven't been exposed to, that conversation and that cross sharing of information really helps to build trust and knowledge on our part. So like I love that poster thing because that's not something we would have thought about. We didn't think of a poster. But when you have a little waiting room and people are waiting to be serviced and they look up and say, "What's that?" That is a useful tool that we didn't perceive that we needed that.
Right.
We're more into writing. Here's a letter.
Right.
So that's something that we're learning
Well,
about.
and I think people of a certain age are more visual, so they're looking for everything visual. That's what technology has done to us. So I think if it doesn't have a picture, they often don't stop and read it. Another question is that the legislature has made noises that they would like to interfere with restoring voting rights. Can you bring us up to date on where that might stand? Have you heard what's happening in the legislature? Are we going to be safe with this, or are they still trying to push back against what the people want?
There's two pieces of legislation that we have testified. Trish Neely is on our board. We're fortunate. She lives in Tallahassee and she's been able to go down and testify. And we also have our lobbyists who testified on some of these things. There is one particular statute. I'm going to see if I can try to remember let me see if I can find it. It could be Senate Bill 304 that it said something like to determine a return the value of what needs to be paid for restitution does not need to be tied to the fair market. And that was like, what? So we got involved. We got involved in that and said that, and I think they did amend it to say that the returning citizen could testify to the value. And there was some obscure case that had to do with. So we got involved with that one, and the state association got involved also, and state association of public defenders. And so we were really on the exact same point on that one. That was one. And then there's another one that talks about having notices, federal notices, not be on newspapers, but to have the Supreme Court create an internet notice, and then to create a directory to tell people what they owed. And in one sense that was kind of like, that could be something that could be helpful in some ways. We spoke against taking away the newspapers because many people don't have the internet, and that would just in our minds exacerbate the internet divide. And also newspaper that would really devastate a lot of newspapers who rely on those resources to stay alive, and the newspapers are often referred to as the fourth leg of government. Right. So we had several reasons, and then we also indicated that that the place where all the information would go about people's what they needed to do to be able to vote, we wanted to be sure that people had the right to dispute that or bring out information. As we said, the clerks of court were not obligated to take records of restitution payments. So it's kind of scary to have people relying upon records to say whether somebody has paid something or not when there was no obligation to report it. those were the main ones that I'm aware of. Oh, there's a third one that Senator Brandes came up with. And that was, he came up with asking a statute that would allow the state attorney to modify a sentence downward. And when you look at the beginning of that statute, the reason for that is to make things fair. Because in some cases, people are getting much bigger sentences than other people. And that was Senate Bill 662 with Brandes. 662. So, and then this is getting a little bit away from restoration of rights per se, but there's a great concern, and there was an alert that went out this week with regards to House Bill 1, which is focusing on civic disorder, which would felonize a lot of things that we would normally do by standing around and protesting in a peaceful manner. But if someone down the road is misbehaving, you could be lumped in with everybody else and arrested. And one of the things is, if you are arrested in that situation, then you would have to stay overnight in jail. You couldn't just get a ticket and then come back. So it's very punitive, and we spoke out against those. I just found the number for the other bills that I was mentioning. One is Senate Bill 402. That's the legal notice bill, Senate Bill 402. And the other is Senate Bill 354. Senate Bill 354 is the one amending the restitution. Those are the main bills that I am aware of that directly impact restoration of rights. There's a lot of bills out there that there's been an alert on that talk about voter suppression, changing, taking away ballot boxes, requiring people to request their vote by mail every year. There is a lot out there that's very damaging, but not specifically on restoration of rights.
Right. Okay. Shirley, do you have anything that you would like to add? Because I don't have any more questions from our viewers.
I want to thank you, Cecile, for a very informative meeting, and I will contact all the people I invited, and if they weren't able to get in, I'll ask them to go to watch it on at the website. So this is good information to have on hand.
Thank you. And then if you guys could, as I think Mary Louise was talking about, just put the the different links so if they can follow up, because I try to speak clearly, but sometimes it'd be nice for them to see whatever the links are in writing.
Okay.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I'm sorry that there were technical difficulties.
Right.
But that's part of what happens with the internet. You just never know.
Gosh, we've done so many months, and I'm sorry today was the one that had to mess up.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. And I'm grateful for the opportunity and to share. And that's the first time I've shown people what's in the little packet. So
yeah, I think the packet is just an excellent idea. It just has everything you need. That little kit you're just ready to go forward with that.
That's what we're trying to do. We just want to meet people where they are, and thank goodness they're doing that work. And if you want a flyer, here's your flyer.
Right.
Put it up.
Yeah, it's those grassroots efforts that wind up making all the difference.
It is. That's exactly where the connection, and that's why the League is so strong. We have the academics, we do our research, we study, we don't just talk off the top of our head. We consult our policy and action. What is the history? What have we said in the past? So we do a lot of that testing of our ideas, but we actually get out and do work. We actually talk to the people. We sign those little postcards. We want to be active. And I've been involved with quite a few other organizations. in particularly working on healthcare issues, and then also, which I'm no longer the healthcare chair. That ended a year
Oh,
or
okay.
so ago. That's okay. I need to actually update that. But certainly with on Amendment 4 matters, we've had some incredible allies, but there's very few that has the membership and the devoted membership that we have, the educated, devoted, action-oriented membership. So every organization brings, strength, you know, but we're one of the few that not only has membership, but active membership. So we should really applaud ourselves for that and keep it up.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Nice to see you, Shirley.